We're talking Falcons free agency here on Sports Talk ATL. The Falcons have been very quiet through this first initial wave, which has been a very big wave. We've seen names. I mean, listen, guys that we talked about on the show, guys that you saw on social media, all those names, pretty much a lot of them gone on big contracts that the Falcons certainly couldn't afford. And that gives you some foresight and what to expect, even with the guys that aren't signed. It's like, hey, if that guy's getting $15 million, I don't know how we're going to afford this guy. And especially when you look at the Falcons cap situation. But, you talked about how this team has no foresight. It's all about today. And I think one of our biggest worries coming into this offseason was you got a lame duck GM that's coaching to make the playoffs, or he's probably going to get fired. Now, I don't know if there's any GM that has missed the playoffs in 5 straight years, hasn't put together an over 500 record, and still has his job. I mean, that's unheard of. So we all expect that Terry Fontenot is on the hot seat, but is he? Because, the way that they're operating early on in free agency, not being super desperate, because they could restructure a ton of contracts and clear space and make some of these moves. It wouldn't make the Falcons good enough to contend for a Super Bowl, but maybe make the playoffs and save your job. It just makes me wonder, like, maybe Arthur Blank, Raheem Morris, and Terry Fontenot had an honest sit down, which actually is a good thing. We don't want to end up like the New Orleans Saints, but on the flip side, was Terry Fontenot kind of given the, hey, it's not as hot as the outside noise is making it seem.
Yeah, don't make moves for today at the cost of tomorrow is kind of what you're saying. Yeah. You're saying that, like, hey, Terry, don't make bad decisions that could bite us in the future because you're okay. You're not going to, if we miss the I don't think they would say if we miss the playoffs, you're fine. I think it would just be, hey, focus, act like you've got your job and you don't have to worry about losing it. Don't make the moves that you think are just going to save it for 2025. Think about building it like you were thinking about building it back in 2020 when you interviewed for the job in the first place. Because that's why we hired you. We hired you from your vision in 2020. Don't stray away from that. Stick with the process. Even the results haven't been what we wanted. Stick with the process is what you're saying is going on behind the scenes. Now, I don't think that's completely, impossible. I think, Arthur Blank may have been able to have that kind of sit down and be like, hey, everybody relax. I see all this crap on the news, Sports Talk ATL saying Terry Fontenot's head, But I think that you can't marry. They've made good decisions. And I know people don't want to hear it, but the Grady Jarrett decision, if he didn't want to take a pay cut, which was the report, or at least the one that the Falcons were offering, we don't have the details, he had to go. He was just not what he was once before the ACL. And at $20 million, you got to be one of the best players at your position. He quite frankly wasn't. And you don't want to go out and pay good money or good players great money. That's, what bad GMs do. But also, you have to marry the smart and efficient use of cap dollars with actually spending the money. Like, we are now going into day 2 of free agency with more holes than we had before free agency even began. So, at some point, I like some of the moves Terry Fontenot is doing. Like, you got to be patient. You don't want to overpay. Trey Hendrickson is still out there. The big fish could still come to Atlanta. But also, at a certain point, you got to be at least a little aggressive. You're basically, at this point, if you're wrong, Terry Fontenot is just making the next GM's job easier by giving him, not restructuring all these deals and not trading more draft picks or not giving out more contracts to free agents that might not deserve it. So on the one hand, I can't understand that. Like, it is a wise use of resources. You don't want to just, because you got cash in your pocket, you don't want to spend it. But in that same breath, you got to spend it at some point.
Well, they have to spend it at some point because, like we said, there's 7 guys. There's 7 starters needed on the defensive side of the ball. 6 starters at minimum. Like, they will have to spend the money that they have. But, they can do it in a way where it's like, hey, we're spending it on 1-year guys. We're spending it on journeymen. We're spending it on cheap guys. We're going to the bargain bin. We're going to take this on the chin. And frankly, that is the right way to do it. Like, we need to take the Kirk Cousins thing on the chin. Get just literally just like
it's
Matt Ryan.
Terrible timing with the fact that, like, you have GM's tenure is running out, and also we don't need to be going all in right now.
Yeah, I mean, 2026 is when you can start talking about
spending money and taking big risks and things like that.
But
if we're thinking about the future, but like you said, is Terry Fontenot thinking about 2026 and beyond, or is he focused on 2025 because his job might be at stake?
But I would think, if you're thinking about next season, bringing back Grady Jarrett would have been a move that you're probably making. Like that you're not letting the heart and soul of your defense and creating an even bigger hole on a defense that already has so many holes. You'd think bringing back Drew Dahlman at a 3-year, $42 million, pretty decently fair offer. You'd think you'd bring him back. Like, these are moves that if you're desperate and you're trying to win tomorrow, like, those are moves you're probably going to make, even if they are a little pricey and stuff like that. So there's part of me that's like, maybe they're doing this the right way. I don't know what Terry's standing is with the organization, but when you make those kind of moves, let go of two guys right at the heart of your offensive and defensive lines that got slightly overpaid but are still good players, you got to think that maybe they are doing this the right way. And I agree with you.
Extended Jake Matthews, which was... guy's going to be 50 by the time he quits playing.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jake Matthews is 32 years old, which is the most shocking thing.
That's crazy.
The guy's been in the league for 11 years. He's going on
he's going on
his 12th season. I mean, Taylor Lewan is out there podcasting. Those are the top two. Those are the top two tackles in that draft, right? They actually, Taylor Lewan.
And Taylor Lewan fell off hard. Yeah. Like, even when he was still playing.
Yeah, I mean, he went from all pro to like bum. Yeah, bum.
Dude, you're getting overpaid.
Out of the league in seconds. So what Jake Matthews has been able to do from a consistency standpoint has been nothing short of amazing. But that's a big money when you're not talking about protecting the blind side anymore.
Right. I heard some guy on I was listening to 92.9 The Game, and they were talking about, this is good. Jake Matthews and protecting Michael Penix's blindside has to be, at the forefront of the Falcons' minds. And I'm thinking, is anybody going to get in this guy's ear and tell him that Caleb McGarry is now the blindside? Did everybody forget we got a southpaw under center now? But yeah, I mean, Jake Matthews called him Honda Accord, Toyota Camry, whatever reliable, piece of crap from Japan you buy. I mean, that's Jake Matthews. He's not great. He's good, and he's been good for a decade plus.
He's just the 10th best tackle in football.
Forever.
He'll be 40 years old, still producing, being the 10th best tackle in football. Overall, though, I'm very, very intrigued to see what happens the rest of this offseason because Terry Fontenot, I'm interested because are we preparing for 2026? Because that should be the process of this team. That's when we can really spend money. But you got a GM where we think he's a lame duck, but maybe he's not a lame duck. So that's a very, very interesting aspect that I guess we'll find out through the remainder of free agency.